Crystal Ball's got a question.
This is Krystal, Peter, and I really appreciate your perspective on this, which I agree with very much. But, you know, some of your past works, you wrote a book called Makers and Takers, Why Conservatives Work Harder, Feel Happier, Have Closer Families, Take Fewer Drugs, Give More Generously, Value Honesty More, Are Less Materialistic and Envious, Whine Less, and even hug their children more than liberals. You're an editor for an Andrew Breitbart website. You're a foreign policy advisor to Sarah Palin. Frankly, aren't you part of the problem with Washington, too? And why should we take what you're saying seriously when you have such a partisan ideological history?
Well, I don't think I have a partisan ideological history in the regard to the ideas that I embrace. The book title that you mentioned, for example, I would encourage you, Krystal, to read the last chapter. That book was written sort of in a response to a lot of the articles that had come out that said, you know, liberals are genetically smarter than conservatives. And I was trying to show the absurdity of that kind of an argument, that I believe you should evaluate people on their ideas.
Well, that's hardly the only...
Who says liberals are genetically smarter than conservatives?
That's hardly the only book that you've written in this vein. I mean, it's written in response partly to Do As I Say, Not As I Do, Profiles in Liberal Hypocrisy. I mean, it's not like this is the only book. I have looked at that book, as a matter of fact.
Okay, and what did I talk about?
In the Makers and Takers book, I mean, basically you're arguing that conservatives are somehow superior than liberals, and us versus them mentality
again, Krystal,
that I think is very damaging to the country.
Let's give them a last word on that, but then let's unite across the spectrum against banking problems. But last word on this, Peter.
Yeah, I think you should actually read the book, Krystal. In the Do As I Say, Not As I Do book, I talk about the fact that hypocrisy goes across political lines. In that particular book, I was focusing on one aspect of it because I felt that it was ignored by the media. But I held everybody in account. And on the Makers and Takers, as I said, read the last chapter. You're looking at the title and coming to these conclusions. I outline all the books and the articles that had been put out in the media about how liberals were a lot smarter than conservatives. And I was simply trying to say that approach of sort of personalizing attacks is a ridiculous way to look at politics. We ought to look at the ideas and the merits rather than trying to demonize. So I would just encourage you to read the introductions and the conclusions of those books.
I did read parts of the book, and I think having profiles in liberal hypocrisy in the title is not helpful to the country.
Let's leave that there for now. Touré, I know you're passionate about banking reform. Steer this back to a bank reform question based on the injustices we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, Matt. I'm really intrigued by the idea of you being the foreign policy advisor to Sarah Palin. Clearly there was a glitch in the matrix there between you and her. Either she failed to listen to you or you failed to do your job. What made it so hard to be the foreign policy advisor to Sarah Palin?
No, it was a very good and positive experience, and we espoused a foreign policy, if you read it, and read the positions and the speeches that she gave, that I think was very Reagan-esque. We abandoned some of the, what you might call neoconservative assumptions that have been dominant in the Republican Party, and we also had serious problems, as you can imagine, with the internationalist views in the Barack Obama administration, but it was a very good experience for me. I'm not working with her anymore, but I think that we helped shape the debate because, frankly, I do think that we are too committed overseas internationally, and I do think that we have to look for American principles and protect American values.